Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by La Marzocco, who's been making espresso machines by hand in Florence, Italy since 1927. That's nearly 100 years of being the go-to espresso machine in the coffee industry for very good reason. Beauty, innovation, dependability, these are the hallmarks of La Marzocco espresso machines because they not only have been just manufacturing espresso machines, they've been learning from the service they provide to their customers ever since the beginning of their company. And that innovation has translated to effective businesses and reliability that is unmatched in the coffee industry. We're talking about espresso machines like the KB90 with the straight-in locking portafilters, scales in the drip trays, and auto flush for cleanliness. You've got the PB, the Linea PB. One of my personal favorites to recommend is the Linea's body, the classic design of the Linea with the technology of today to allow the barista ultimate control over the extraction. You've got just the classic Linea and machines like the lever machine, Leva. There's all sorts of configurations that have been developed with the end user in mind to not only be breathtakingly beautiful, but also effective, dependable, and ultimately to make you as a coffee shop owner successful. So if you're in the market for an espresso machine, I think that you really need to have a conversation by emailing info@lamarzocousa.com or check out their website, lamarzocousa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by the fine folks over at Rattleware. You know, the thing that really makes a big difference in the cafe is often the small things. The small things like small wares. When little things like knock boxes and pitchers and whisks and whatnot don't work, it really just throws a wrench in the whole thing. Often we think about like, oh, what if the ice machine goes down or something big like that? But when a little thing doesn't work, it's just like, oh, why can't this just work? And that's what Rattleware is all about. They want the coffee industry to have them in the background. They don't want to be the stars of the show. They want what you do to be on the stage, and they are supporting what you do with great small wares that just work. So check them out at rattleware.com, and I think you're going to be really pleased with the kind of selection and the quality of the products they have. Again, that's over at rattleware.com. Okay, everyone. Well, today we are going to talk about resourcing and training your staff a little bit. I really am thinking a lot about how we can set people up for success. And ultimately, one of the main things that sets people up for either success or failure is logically the nature of how we set them up. What does setting up look like? Setting up actually requires work. We say the words set up for success. I want to set you up for success. Well, that requires effort, and it requires a sort of creation of a stage with the tools necessary to do the work well, which means that you've actually invested thought and time into projecting what does this barista need in order to work well behind the bar. And it starts all the way back at the beginning of the process of starting a coffee shop, where you have invested so much energy into even just getting over the hump of deciding that you're going to start a coffee bar that it feels like a victory to even just get the coffee bar open. The problem with that is that we often cut corners when it comes to the design of our cafes. We don't start with a menu and then work to design a cafe that can produce the menu, or a bar that has good workflow. So automatically, that's the first thing you have to think about in setting people up for success, is that you have put yourself in that future tense of your business where you know you're going to hire people and then delegate to them the responsibility to take care of the thing that you have made. And I will argue that if you've opened a coffee bar without a lot of intentionality behind the workflow based on the menu, you haven't really made much of anything. What you have done is you've gathered together things and put them in a space. That's not the same as making something. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a very purposeful effort to do this. You've got to create some intentionality to where an espresso machine goes, or a grinder, or the fact that you're going to need either an automatic whisk or a handheld whisk, and where those go. What does it look like to walk through the stage of making a latte or a tea or a matcha? And we make these decisions sometimes so frivolously because we're enamored with the idea of the thing, but not really putting ourselves into the shoes of the person who is going to be making the thing. So that's the first step of tools and training and fixing the issue of resourcing our staff well, is Start at the beginning and put yourself in the shoes of the people who are going to be executing on the dreams that you have for your cafe. That might be easy to do if you've been working for a long time in a pop up capacity or a cart or a trailer. You already have that knowledge personally, so it's easy for you to project forward and empathize in a physical way. By planning the bar well, the biggest problem we have is a lack of tools to do the job well. We are given compliments often about how, barista, my staff are so resourceful and they're problem solvers and all this other stuff. See, some of these things are red flags. Like when you have a value on your set of values that says, I want people to be creative problem solvers, I'm like, okay, that's great, but that's kind of your job. As a manager and as an owner, I understand that in a moment's notice, somebody might be called upon to make an executive decision to solve a problem, but that's not necessarily the same as solving it systemically. It might come up again and again, and every barista knows this. The problems that get solved in the moment oftentimes don't make it back to leadership in time for leadership to do anything about it, and nor does leadership have the time and inclination or capacity often to actually find out the root cause of why it takes so long to make a particular specialty drink that we put on the menu a little too fast, or to solve a dysfunctional ice machine, or like a lid in the ice machine that keeps on like falling off, and we're going to get around to it. But our innovative and our resourceful and flexible problem solving baristas are constantly standing in the gap in a way that really lets us off the hook and doesn't really give us the sense of urgency that, hey, maybe we should really take this seriously. See, there's a limit to how much a barista is going to put up with before they just say there's too many little dysfunctional things and sometimes big dysfunctional things that I'm relied upon out of my good nature to deal with, but it doesn't seem like management and leadership are dealing with it as much as I am on a daily basis. So you've got to have the inclination that, yeah, there might be times where a barista is called upon to make do, but you've got to really make sure they're not called upon to do so for inordinate amount of time. I talk about this in some of my talks where it took like 2 weeks to get a knockbox to a coffee bar where we had to use a broom handle and a trash can as a knockbox for 2 weeks with duct tape and everything else. And see, we didn't have to put duct tape on the broom handle. Why we did is because we were concerned about the portafilters. I mean, that's going above and beyond. Could you have gotten a knockbox faster? Well, yes. But guess what happened? By the time the knockbox came, it almost felt like we were giving up an old friend. my broom handle with the duct tape. We didn't name it. We didn't get that far. Another week, at 3 weeks, I could have named it. And then we would have basically said, forget getting the knockbox. This is part of the family. So sometimes, if we're honest, we're relying on our barista's ability to acclimate to a constant dysfunction in the tools that we're giving them. So you've got to give people the tools. In a real world scenario, you're going to need more than one of many things. So you've got to say, well, how many of these whisks or shakers or spoons or cups are we going to need? And it's not worth trying to nickel and dime the process. Spend the money to have enough to do what you said you're going to do, or just don't do it. One of the ways that we also do this, of course, by setting people up to not succeed is by not giving them the information or training. It's not just physical tools. So we rush programs into existence and we say, well, all of a sudden we're going to create this menu item, and we don't give people the tools of time and training, information, understanding to change their muscle memory. And then we throw them into that situation and it looks really awkward. And we wonder why some of our initiatives for beverages don't really work out. And rather than saying, well, maybe it was because we were just kind of ham-handed in the way that we executed this thing, we blame baristas for not doing even more acclimatizing to our dysfunctional ways of putting things into play. Rushing programs into existence and having them not work out is not the fault of the people who were handed the program. It is the people who produced the program. So we got to make sure that we're above board when it comes to that. So you consider yourself an agent of resourcing. When you train people, you've got to train people in reality of the cafe and what's going to actually happen. You've got to take it upon yourself to institutionalize solutions to problems that are discovered along the process of your business's life. That's just part of what growth looks like in a business is you grow to understand the different facets of the business that need a little bit more attention. Baristas bringing up issues and or you experiencing those things means now the next step is to put into a permanent place a solution that will allow us to not repeat the same problem. And we simply have to allow ourselves enough time and attention and follow through as leaders to be the support to set people up for success the right way. That's how we set them up for success. Is a creation of time, attention, follow through, and preemptive determination to give resources to people to do the job in a way that we know they're going to need because we've lived that in a future tense and we've planned as best we could, and we continue to grow in relationship to how it's going by receiving feedback and improving the process year after year or even quarter after quarter. So I hope that this is helpful and gives you some motivation to take your resourcing and setting your baristas and your staff up for success to the next level. And as always, thanks for joining me on the show. If you, by the way, are an owner that wants to be a part of a community of other owners in a mastermind style 6-month program, 12 2-hour sessions with member focused hot seat times of focusing on specific issues that members bring, collaboration to bring about solutions and accountability and just great camaraderie in coffee shop ownership, then the Keyholder coaching groups might be for you. And we're going to be launching a next round of cohorts in September. If you want to apply for this, simply email chris@keystotheshop.com or follow the link in the show notes. And I would love to have a conversation with you. So again, email chris@keystotheshop.com for Keyholder coaching groups. And with that, that is the end of our shift break today, everyone. Thanks a lot, and we will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break. From Keys to the Shop.